Today I want to talk from the idea of value. Value. Now, value doesn't need much of a definition because we all know the definition of value. But there are some things that have been known to really depreciate in value very quickly, don't they? There are some things that you buy, and as soon as you buy them, they have now depreciated. Not because they picking on you, just because it depreciates as soon as you get it, right? If you've ever bought a car or thought about buying a car, especially if you thought about buying a new car, what do they tell you about new cars? The second you drive it off the lot, it depreciates 20% in value. You just lost a bunch of value because you drove that thing off the car, and it is no longer new. It is a used vehicle, friend. And so you can't take it back 3 days later or a month later and get the same value. It has depreciated. Some people, it's a big deal to them to wear the newest clothes as soon as they come out. Maybe that's you. Maybe that's one of your friends. You like, I got to wear it when it drops. I got to rock it as soon as it comes out. And that is of value to you. You just forget the fact that 2 weeks later, that thing is going to be on the clearance rack for about 40% off, you know? Like, it is like, but I got to wear it when it's new, forgetting the fact that it's going to depreciate in value very, very quickly, is it not? Because some things are like that. Some things, as soon as we take them in, as soon as we acquire them, as soon as we get them, they start to depreciate in value. It's sort of the way value works on one level. In fact, the way you find a really, really good deal, especially if you're going to purchase something or you're going to acquire something that is not new to the market or new to people in general, but maybe it's something that's been around for a while. Maybe it's something that's a used item. Maybe you found this thing on eBay. One of the best ways to be able to get a really good deal is to be able to see the value in something while it's in a state before it's been restored, right? You buy something and it looks like junk to some people, but to you, you can see the value, right? You can see the value. You can see what it could be. You can see what it ought to be. You could see what it might be. A little bit of paint, a little bit of elbow grease, and you never know. They selling this house on the cheap. But you know what? If we were to knock this wall down and paint the whole thing, you never know. We could maybe make a little money in here because you see the value. Here's what value is, and if you're taking notes today, it's a great day to take notes. You can write this down. That value is a determination based on a perception. That's what value is it not? It's a determination somebody has made. It is I think this is worth that. It's a determination somebody has made based on the perception of that thing, not based on the quality. Because sometimes you could find really, really quality things really, really cheap. Why? Because of the perception. And sometimes you can find very poorly made things, but just because they have a certain logo on it, like it's gonna now be perceived to be worth more, right? Why? Because of the perception that then informs the value. Value is a determination based on a perception. And this idea of value is very significant to us as we go to the scripture today. Because today I want to turn your attention to a story in the ministry of Jesus, an account that took place that some of you will be familiar with. Some of you have heard, and maybe you've heard some confusing things about this particular story. Well, we're going to walk through it together today because what I hope that comes to light in it is this idea of value on many different levels. Because value can take place on many different levels, can it not? One person sees something as valuable, another person sees it as not so valuable. One person sees a certain habit as valuable. The other person is like, no, I ain't got time to go to the gym. But it's going to help you live longer. I don't want to live longer. I'm trying to get out of here. You know what I'm saying? Like, perception of value. Let's look together in John chapter 8. John chapter 8 is where we're going to look at. We're going to read several verses, kind of put a pause on it, talk for a minute, and then we're going to come back to it, all right? John chapter 8, verse 1, this is the way the scripture reads. It says, Jesus returned to the Mount of Olives. That was kind of where he was staying at that particular moment. But early the next morning, he was back at the temple. So he had been at the temple, and now he's coming back to the temple. Okay. A crowd soon gathered, and he sat down and taught them. That's what you did if you were a teacher in that day. You didn't stand behind a little lectern. You didn't get on the gray carpet. You sat down. As he was speaking, the teachers of religious law and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in the act of adultery. They put her in front of the crowd, "Teacher," they said to Jesus, "this woman was caught in the act of adultery. The law of Moses says to stone her. What do you say?" They were trying to trap him. That's a very important little statement that's going to be very important as we walk through. You may want to circle that, underline it. They were trying to trap him into saying something they could use against him. Jesus stooped down and wrote in the dust with his finger. On the surface here, just surface level looking at this, there's a clear determination of value by these religious leaders. These religious leaders have decided a few things about value that are very clear to us on the surface. One is this: they have determined that to them, women are not worth as much as men. You say, how do you know? Well, I know because, without being too graphic and getting into too much detail, it says this woman was caught in the act of adultery, which you cannot be caught in the act of adultery by yourself. Just to be clear. So where was the dude? On the surface, there's a clear determination of value by these religious leaders that for them, women didn't matter as much as men. There's another determination made by these religious leaders that, again, just on the surface, because they keep pointing back there. In fact, when they bring this woman and put her in front of the crowd right before Jesus and say, "We caught her in the act of adultery," they bring up this thing that they're trying to uphold. They say, "The law that Moses gave us says this." And that was their way of sort of posturing. That was their way of sort of being out in front of people and saying, look, what we value is what the law says. What we value is what God has said. And so it gives this appearance that they really value God because they value the law. And it gives this appearance that they really value men and that women can be used to help point them to what it is they're trying to get across. See, there are two things I hope you get today about value, and these are the two big ideas I'm going to share with you today. But the first is this, that with people, value is subjective. With people, value is subjective. It's true. With people like me, people like you, our value is subjective. Now, maybe you're not like me, but I love a good negotiation. Do you like to negotiate? Do you? Come on, you like to barter a little bit? I wish we sort of lived in a society where you barter. They're taking it, the little bit that we have left, they're taking it out. Like we had to purchase a vehicle back at the end of last year, and I started realizing that all these places that sell vehicles, they have this new way of posturing themselves. They like to say it like this: no haggle pricing. You know what that means? They don't want to talk to me. They just want to be like, this is what it said. Just pay us this. And so every place that it said no haggle pricing, I was like, next one, because I want to haggle. I want to negotiate. I want to talk this thing through. And so you get that sometimes when you buy a car. You can get that if you ever buy a house. You ever get in that type of thing, dealing with real estate. A lot of times you can talk about, well, what is the real value of this? But the best place that we can all experience it, and it's why I still love it to this day, is on Craigslist. I love Craigslist so much. I love it so much. I never really buy anything on Craigslist, but I sell things on Craigslist, always for cash, if you ever wonder. Like, that's just the way I roll, because I ain't trying to deal with people's checks and credit unions and coming in from Uganda. Like, no, it's all fake. But I will sell some stuff on Craigslist, and I love it because I love this interaction of negotiating. I love being able to kind of figure out what somebody might be willing to pay for said thing that I'm gonna sell. I love to sort of talk it out. And there's a thing you got to figure out when you're in a discussion with someone trying to negotiate something, is you have to figure out kind of where your desire to get rid or to acquire what it is you need meets with their desire to get rid of or acquire what you have, right? You got to figure out where those cross. You got to figure out what is it in them that wants to get rid of this. Are they just trying to get rid of this because it's taking up space in their house? And so they'll really sell it for anything? I mean, anything? Like just the fact that you would come by and actually take it away is probably enough. You know, like where are they at? Is it something that is of very great sentimental value to them? And so it doesn't matter that you understand what it's maybe worth in the marketplace out there. They're not going to come down because this was their great-great-great-great-great-great-grandpa's, and because it was great-great-great-great-great-grandpa's, there is no way they're going to come down on this. They think it's worth way more than it actually is because they have a distorted view of value, because value is subjective. With people, value is subjective. One person is going to see something as being very valuable, very significant, very worth the price, while another person is going to say, there ain't no way I'd have to pay that much money for that, you know? Because value is subjective. And here's what you need to understand about the subjectivity of value. If you're taking notes, you can write this down. Value changes with the season. Depending upon what season of life you are in, value can change. Maybe in the last season of your life, what was valuable to you was being able to stay out late and hang out on the weekends, you know? You used to love to be able to post on the gram at 2 a.m. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what you did, and you were about it. It's like, yeah, look, I'm up late, and I'm doing this, and I'm about that life, and look at me. But now you got a little child that's born in this season. You got a small baby in the house. And that baby don't really know about the gram and don't really know about sleeping when they're supposed to sleep. And so now you ain't concerned about posting on the gram at 2 a.m. You ain't really concerned about trying to be out and trying to be places, trying to be seen and trying to hang out. If that baby's asleep, you asleep. Why? Because of the season you're in, right? Because value can change based on the season. Maybe in the last season of your life, the car that you drove was very important to you. Maybe you were single and you was trying to holler at somebody and you thought, hey, maybe some more girls would like me if I roll up in this ride, you know? And so you had a ride that it looked good. It made noises when you be at the stoplight. So you could because clearly that's very attractive to the ladies. You know what I'm saying? Like they're very concerned about that. You know, you always had your wheels shine. Like it always looked good. You would take care of it. You would park it way away from other people when you parked in a parking lot because ain't nobody going to ding your car. You know what I'm saying? Like you were very concerned about how your ride look in a previous season. But now maybe you can afford what you used to could afford even more than you could then. But it just doesn't matter near as much to you. You just need something in this season that gets you from A to B and back to A. And if it can do that, I'm fine. I don't even care. Why? Because of what you value in this season. Because value will change for you, for me. Value will change based on the season. But not only that, write this down, value changes with the situation. Depending upon the situation you find yourself in, you may find yourself valuing something in one situation that you don't value in another situation. You know, sometimes folks will sell stuff, and they'll sell stuff just because they need the cash. And they need the cash, and they value the cash more than they value the thing that they have. So they will just sell it, and they'll sell it for whatever, because I just need the cash. And it's based on that situation that is moving them in that direction. Maybe in another situation, though, with another item, they're trying to make a profit. And so they can sit there and wait till you come up to their price. But they're more concerned about the profit they're making than getting some quick cash. And so they will sit on it. And so value, not only is it subjective and changing with the season, but it also changes with the situation. And what we see in John chapter 8, y'all thought I forgot about John. What we see in John chapter 8 with these Pharisees is that value for them is very, very subjective. Because remember I told you that on the surface, it seems that they've made some clear determinations. It seems that they're trying to posture themselves in a certain way to show what they value, but below the surface, there's a very clear conflict of values by these religious leaders. See, it looks like that they actually value certain things on the surface. But if you go below the surface, what you'll actually find is a very strong conflict of values being demonstrated here. Can I take you back to John 7? If you read this sometime, maybe you should read this week. The story that we dive into beginning in John chapter 8, verse 1, actually doesn't start in John chapter 8, verse 1. It starts in the middle part of John chapter 7. Jesus is at a feast, a 7-day Jewish feast known as Succoth. And at the end of this feast is the most significant, most important day of the feast. And Jesus stands up on that day of the feast and begins to teach in the temple. And what he was teaching in the temple, the Jewish leaders, the religious leaders, and the Pharisees did not like what he was saying. They didn't like it so much that they actually walked away from there and began to plot how they were going to get Jesus. Remember what John tells us in chapter 8, that they were trying to trap them. They didn't start that morning. They began it the night before because they did not like what Jesus was saying on this most significant, most holy, most important day of the feast. So John tells us in the end of chapter 7 that these religious leaders, actually, as they went back to the house, they began to conspire what they were going to do. And they found a really, really great opportunity because they found this woman caught in the act of adultery. And they decided what we are going to do is we're going to put Jesus on trial and create a kangaroo court of sorts and see what Jesus says. And either way, he decides we're going to win because he's either going to get in trouble with the people in front of him or he's going to get in trouble with the Roman guards who are protecting this temple complex. There were just many, many, many conflicts of values that they were demonstrating in doing this. You see, in that day, these religious leaders, these Pharisees and religious scholars had actually taken it upon themselves to protect these holy weeks and these feasts so much that this is the way they operated in that day. That they would take the day immediately following a feast, and it was to be observed as a Sabbath. A Sabbath. If you're unfamiliar with what that term means, in Jewish culture, that meant that you did nothing. You weren't allowed to work. You weren't allowed to toil. In fact, what you will find, many of the interactions with Jesus, if you read the Gospels, these stories about the life and ministry of Jesus, a lot of times the accusations that these religious leaders like to throw at Jesus and his disciples were things that they would do on the Sabbath because they didn't observe the Sabbath in the way that they thought they should observe the Sabbath. So here is this day immediately after this feast has ended that they have said, we are going to honor God's law so much, because remember, that's what we're all about. We're going to honor God's law. We're going to honor God's law so much that we're going to say this day is a Sabbath too. There's only one problem. If you're going to say this day is a Sabbath and it's supposed to be treated as a Sabbath, and you're a religious leader, why are you not treating it as a Sabbath? Because to go find someone in the act of adultery and bring her to your kangaroo court to be judged would be considered work. Not to mention, this law that they say that they hold to so tightly, the law of Moses says we should stone her. Well, the law of Moses actually tells them how to handle these types of situations in Leviticus chapter 20. If you care to look at that, you can. Fin through there right around verse 10. You will find that what the law actually said is that if you found someone caught in the act of adultery, you bring both of them, the man and the woman, and you bring them, and then they should be judged. So you do not bring just the woman and leave the man to get off easy. No. You bring them both in. So not only are they not honoring this day that's supposed to be a Sabbath, but they're also breaking the law of God. What are they doing? The religious leaders are violating the law in the name of enforcing it. Which means what? They have another agenda. They have another agenda. They have something else they're trying to do. What are they trying to do? Trap Jesus. See, that's what you need to recognize about what you do. See, your actions expose your agendas, which expose your values. The actions, the things that you and I do, bring exposure to our real agenda. And our real agenda is what constitutes and what fleshes out what we actually value. See, your values are not something you wrote down in your diary, right? They're not something you tacked on the wall in your office building. That's fine, cute, and neat, but your values are really those things that formulate your agenda. And what formulates your agenda then evidence itself in the things that you do. See, you don't tell people what you value, you show them what you value. Y'all better help me. You don't tell people what you value, you show people what you value. If somebody ever comes across you and tells you how hard they work, can I tell you one thing about them? They don't work hard. If somebody ever comes up to you and tells you how generous they are, can I tell you what they ain't? Generous. If somebody ever comes up to you and talks to you about how smart they are, let me tell you what smart people don't do. Run around talking about how smart they are. They just allow their actions to prove what it is they are. Your actions expose your agenda, which expose your values. They expose it. They show people what's really going on. And Jesus is so wise. He picks up on all of this. He picks up on all of it. He picks up on what they're trying to do. He picks up on how they're trying to twist the law of God and how they're trying to twist their own application of the law of God. He picks up on all of it. That's why he writes in the dust. Because they actually believed as a religious leader that writing was part of your work. So Pharisees and scribes did not write on the Sabbath. However, they did allow you to write in the dust because the wind would blow it away. Therefore, it wouldn't be permanent and not be considered actual work. Jesus is so smart. And so he starts writing in the dust to communicate to them, I'm not some redneck little Pharisee or little rabbi coming around talking to you from my little hometown. I know how you interpret the law. I know what the law of God actually said. And I'm about to expose you for your values right here and right now. Because I understand with people, value is subjective. And so it goes on like this. This is what John says, starting in verse 7. He goes like this. He says, they kept demanding an answer. Jesus is just down there doodling in the dust, right? And he says, I need an answer. So Jesus stood up again and said, all right, but let the one who has never sinned throw the first stone. Then he stooped down and again wrote in the dust. When the accusers heard this, they slipped away one by one, beginning with the oldest, until only Jesus was left in the middle of the crowd with the woman. Then Jesus stood up again and said to the woman, where are your accusers? Didn't even one of them condemn you? No, Lord, she said. And Jesus said, neither do I. Go and sin no more. See, what Jesus did here, he didn't condone her sin, but he also didn't condemn her as a person. And you can do both. That's the way Jesus looks at this. He doesn't condone her sin. He didn't say, all right, well, if they don't condemn you, have a nice day. He didn't condone her sin. He didn't say, it's all right, adultery, smolder. No, he didn't do that. He didn't condone her sin. But he also showed that he valued her as a person, which is setting people up to see how God sees things. His actions here exposed his agenda, which communicated loudly what God values. See, because we may feel personally about ourselves that value is subjective, because with people, it is subjective. People will love you in one season and hate you in the next season, because their value of you is subjective. People will sing your praises in one year and not want anything to do with you the next year. Why? Because our value is subjective. But what Jesus has to communicate here in this little interaction that these Pharisees created for him is that even though with people value is subjective, with God, value is set. With God, value is set. You don't get it. Can I get somebody to come help me? I just need one person real quick who could come and help me. Can somebody stand up and run up here real quick? Somebody help me. Somebody's gonna come. Somebody's gonna come real quick. And they're gonna be glad that they were the one that came. Come real quick. Come on. Because with God, what are we talking about? Value is, y'all forgot, with God, value is, thank you. All right, we're gonna talk. All right, let's do this. Tell everybody your name.
Monique.
This is Monique. Y'all give it up for Monique. Yes, love Monique. All right. Monique, what is this?
A $20 bill.
$20 bill. This is a $20 bill. Positive?
Positive.
Okay. Hold that real quick. See, I got to be honest. I think that you like this $20 bill because this is like fresh out the ATM $20 bill. Is it not?
It is. Crisp, y'all.
Oh, it's crisp. So you actually, I'm gonna take this back. You like this because it's crisp. Mm-hmm. You know, one of my sisters, when I was a kid, one of my sisters, she liked her money to be like so crispy and neat that I kid you not, she would iron her money. Use the spray starch and iron it. Dumbest thing I ever saw in my life, but that's what she did. I kid you not. But it's because she liked it crisp. This is a crisp $20 bill. I wonder if you would like it as much. What about that? What is that still?
It's still a $20 bill.
Would you want that $20 bill?
Yes, I would.
Yeah. What about that stepped on? Used to be $20 bill.
I still want the $20 bill.
All right, y'all know we meet in a movie theater? So that means one thing. I don't know if y'all know this about how they clean a movie theater, but what they do is they take leaf blowers, okay? And they come down the aisles, and they leaf blow to the edges, and they bring everything down here to the front. That means the front of these floors have things like gummy bears, nachos, jalapenos. All right. So even though this thing has been wadded up, it's been beaten, it's been kicked, it's been dragged through the gummy, would you want this?
I sure would.
Let me ask you a question. Why would you want this still?
Because the value of that wrinkled up, trampled on paper is still $20 in the end.
Because it's still $20 in the end. You know, this is like us. Some of us have been kicked, stepped on, talked about, dragged through the mess, and we look at ourselves and think there is no way this is still valuable. The thing is, just like this $20 bill, our value is set. Is set. And the reason Monique still would want this is because she can still take this to the store, and guess what? It's still valuable. It's still valuable. And some of you need to realize, because you've been beaten up and kicked and messed with and talked about, and you feel crumbled up and like you're not worthy because you're dirty. I have news for you. With God, your value is set. Give it up for Monique. Take that. Thank you for helping me. Your value is set. I wish maybe for a minute somebody in here would recognize that's true about themselves. That's true about what God says about you. That you are not just the experiences that have happened to you. It's not just that people kicked you around. It's not just that people tried to throw you through the mud. They lied about you, or they told the truth about what you did. See, the thing is we start to allow that subjectivity to set our value, but with God, our value is set. See, that's what we thank God for. When we gather and worship, I know sometimes it looks like people who maybe lift their hands, or people who clap, or people who sing, or people who get really involved or really passionate about what God is doing. You think that somehow they just had an ATM life. They just been stored up in an ATM, and so boom, they got kicked out, and they were iron pressed and starched and ready to go, and hadn't really had any difficult things happen to them. No, most of us are wrinkled up messes. But we allow God to say, you're still valuable. I still have value in you. There's still something I can do through your life. I didn't disqualify you because you're crinkled up. I didn't disqualify you because you're dirty. I can see past the dirt and see the value I placed on the inside of you. With God, your value is set. See, you are not worth less because of what you did. Some people think that, though. They think that they were worth less because of what they did. That's what those Pharisees tried to accuse this woman of. They tried to have this woman executed. Why? Because of what she did. And they were trying to make the case that her value is worth less because of what she did. No. Because you are not worth less because of what you did. You sinned. Okay. Just like Jesus told this woman, don't sin anymore, but I'm not here to condemn you. So go and don't sin, but walk in the grace that I give you, because that doesn't change your value. Because you're not worth less because of what you did. And watch this, the other side is true. You're not worth more because of what you do. You're not worth more because of what you do. What we do out of response because of all that God has seen in us, all that God has done for us. He gave his life for us. And so now what we do is not to somehow try to take ourselves and turn us from a 20 to a 50. How cool would it be to be 100, y'all? Blue strips up in it. Like, how great would that be? Be wonderful. I'd love it. That's not how it works. Because with God, our value is set. So just because I do a lot, I do out of honor for my God. And even when I mess up, guess what? I know that with him, my value is set. So why then do so many of us, maybe even you, have a tough time believing the value that God has placed on your life? Why do we have such a hard time seeing the value that God places on somebody else's life? Why is it? Why is it that we want to, much like those religious people do, throw people out because of what they did? Deem people as unusable because of what we heard they said? Why do we do that? Because unlike God, we don't see the value he sees in them. But if God sees value in you, you should be one who sees value in others. But I think for many of us, the reason that we view ourselves as dirty and crumpled up and unusable now has nothing to do with anything else than we don't see our value. We just see the experiences that have now created our present state. I'm here to tell you something today. That God can restore your value of your value. That's what he wants to do. The God we serve can restore your value of your value. Some of you don't feel like there's anything usable left in you. There is. God can restore the value of your value. Some of you feel like that divorce that you went through 10 years ago has now just disqualified you from God ever using you, and you've just been struggling and you've been dealing with it. You don't know how you're ever going to get over it. And you don't know if you could ever really even smile again because you still think about those days and wonder and all this kind of stuff, and you're mad and you're frustrated. Can I tell you, God can restore the value of your value. Some of you feel like because you haven't lived out this faith thing the way you know you should. There are parts of your life that you still don't trust God. You've been hanging around church for a long time. And you're like, I wonder if I'll ever get to a point where I don't struggle with that. I wonder if I'll ever get to a point where I actually do those things that I know I'm supposed to do. And you allow that to kick you and drag you around and diminish your value. And I came to restore something on the inside of you today. I came to tell you what God says about you. That with him, your value is set. He sees you. He knows everything you've done. Everything you've been trying to do. He says those things don't change your value. Because I set your value. I set it. And people may say things about you. People may say you're not talented. People may say you should give it up. People may say you'll never hold down a job. People may say you ain't gonna be there for them kids. People will say things about you. Don't matter what they say. With people, value is subjective. But God says your value is set. And I wanna say today from his word what he says about you. So would you close your eyes just for a moment and allow me to read the scripture to you. The scripture from Psalm 139, where the psalmist writes these words that declare who we are and how we're made and how our value is set. And some of you today need to believe these words are true about you. Here's what the psalmist said. He said, "You made me, all the delicate inner parts of my body, and you knit me together in my mother's womb. Thank you for making me so wonderfully complex. Your workmanship is marvelous. How well I know it. You watched me as I was being formed in utter seclusion, as I was woven together in the dark of the womb. You saw me before I was born. Every day of my life was recorded in your book. Every moment was laid out before a single day had passed. How precious are your thoughts about me, O God. They cannot be numbered.